So, good evening, everyone. And we'll begin with prayers directed to the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and all the objects of refuge, and helping us get into a really positive, altruistic state of mind for being here. And then we'll do a little bit of meditation related to last week's topic.
To the teacher and now transcendent destroyer, the one that's gone, the foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world's supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate and go for refuge. When I was supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop into a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Niyatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. So take a few moments to check your body and mind. Try to be in a position that's comfortable, relaxed, but also conducive for meditation. Trying to keep the back straight. You can have your eyes open a little to let light in, or if that's too difficult, you can let them close as long as you can avoid falling asleep. And check your mind. If there are thoughts running around in your mind, maybe things you did during the day or any time in the past, or thoughts about what you're going to do later tonight or this weekend or any time in the future, leave those thoughts aside for now. Bring your awareness to the present moment and the present place wherever you are. Really feel how fortunate we are to have all the conditions we have in our life, having a human life, human intelligence, having the chance to learn the Buddha's teachings, which show the way to be free of all suffering and the causes of suffering forever, and to develop our potential for awakening, enlightenment, becoming just like the Buddha himself, so that we can be of the greatest possible benefit to others, to all beings, as well as to ourselves. So take a few moments to really generate a positive, altruistic intention for being here, wanting to learn as much as you can, to cultivate your positive potential, so that you can be of as much benefit as possible to others, to all living beings. So last week we read through the section on the 3 lower realms, the various kinds of sufferings, problems experienced by the beings in those realms. And this is done for the purpose of generating a strong determination not to be born in those realms, to make sure we create the causes for fortunate rebirths and avoid creating the causes for those unfortunate rebirths. But knowing about those sufferings is also helpful for us to have compassion, the compassion we need to generate bodhicitta and follow the bodhisattva's path for the benefit of all living beings. So we need
to know what kind of sufferings and problems they have, that really enhances our compassion and helps us have a strong determination to follow the path and become enlightened so we can help all of them. So for the meditation, imagine yourself as a being in one of those three lower realms. You can take your pick, whichever one you would like to use, but do your best to get a feeling for what it will be like in such a rebirth. So you can remember some of the sufferings of those realms that we looked at last week, and really try to put yourself in that situation. Really feel, empathize with what it would be like to be a being in those realms. And now ask yourself if you think it's possible that you could be born in that situation in your next life or some later life. And whatever your answer is, yes or no, what are your reasons for thinking that way? So the purpose of learning about and meditating on these sufferings isn't to get upset, get scared, to feel despair, because the situation is not hopeless. It's not definite that we will be born in such realms. It's possible, but not definite. And there are things we can do. We'll learn about these as we go through the Lamrim, mainly taking refuge, the next subject, and then learning about karma, doing the best we can to refrain from creating negative karma, which is the cause for those rebirths, and creating virtuous karma, which is the cause of good rebirth, and then purifying whatever negative karma we've created in the past. So if we really put our hearts, our minds into those practices, then we can definitely avoid such rebirths in the future. Did any of you choose the hell realms? Yeah? Hungry ghost? Animal? That's probably the easiest because we can see animals, so there's no doubt that they exist. And we can also see the kind of problems and sufferings that they have. And it may seem with some animals that they don't have a lot of suffering. For example, pets, especially in countries like America and Europe, people treat their pets incredibly well. And sometimes they have better lives than some of the human beings in the world. They have a home, they have food, they have love. They get to go to the doctor when they're sick, although they don't want to, but but yeah. So I think people sometimes don't fully understand the disadvantages of an animal rebirth, and sometimes even have the thought, oh, it would be nice to be born in that, like that type of being, like a bird. I could fly all over the place and just be free, and that would be so fun, so cool. Or a fish swimming around, that would be neat. Or being a cat and sleeping all day and not have to go to work, just so, yeah. It does happen, yeah? People have such thoughts, some wishes, such wishes. So we need to be very careful about that, otherwise we might get what we wish for. And so that's why it's good to really check carefully what kind of experiences they have. And even pets who have very comfortable lives, they still have suffering. Yeah, they don't always feel well, and they can't tell us what's wrong with them. So we just have to guess and hope we get it right. And the worst, they say, the worst suffering of animals is their limited intelligence. Their mind or their brain, whatever you want to call it, is simply not capable of developing beyond a certain point. So they're not able to understand, especially the Dharma. Yeah. So even if they have a chance to listen to the Dharma, they wouldn't be able to understand it. Even the most basic thing like karma, the things that you do will bring consequences that you will have to experience in the future. If you kill or steal or do other bad things, you're going to suffer for that in the future. So don't do those things. So we could talk all day long and they wouldn't understand it. So this is the biggest problem, yeah. They do have Buddha nature. Every sentient being has Buddha nature, just like Venerable Chuni reminded us the other day. Even, what was it, flies and mosquitoes and bees? Shantideva says. So even insects have Buddha nature. Every living being has Buddha nature. But, to be able to understand that you have Buddha nature and then make use of that and do what needs to be done to develop it, you need certain conditions like intelligence. So human intelligence has the ability to understand that and start working on developing it. So be careful. Thoughts about animals. And I think too, it's good to be careful about getting attached. I know it's very easy to get attached to animals. When I lived in Singapore, I used to collect kittens. There's so many stray cats in the streets, and if I saw a little kitten that seemed to be, without its mother and crying, and it would just break my heart, and I knew it would die if I didn't take it home, so I would take them home. And then you get attached to them, and then if they run away or die or somebody else wants them, then it's really hard. So so we have to be careful about attachment to animals, because that might also be a cause for that kind of rebirth. If we have a strong attachment to a particular animal and then that animal dies, we might think, oh, I would like to be with them again. And, who knows? We might end up in another animal rebirth. So ideally, we love them, we have loving kindness for them, we have compassion for them, we take care of them, but try to keep the attachment out of that. And it's not easy. But also attachment to that form of life. You just be really clear in your mind that that type of being, that type of rebirth would definitely be disadvantageous, especially in terms of Dharma or spiritual practice. And last week, Tracy asked a question about the hell guardians. Those are the beings who are doing the torturing and killing of the hell beings, and wondering, are those sentient beings too? So I found some information about that. So there's a couple of commentaries to Vasubandhu's Abhidharmakosha, where there's a lot of detailed explanation about the different realms. So one of the commentaries is from the first Dalai Lama, and the other by a Tibetan Lama named Chim Jambayang. And according to these commentaries, there are different points of view about that. So it was discussed long ago. It's not a new question. And so different schools, Buddhist philosophical schools, have different points of view. According to the Vaibhashikas, that's the school we usually study first when we study the tenets. The Vaibhashikas say that the hell guardians are sentient beings. However, the Sautrantikas, the Sutra school, this is kind of the next one we study, say that they are not sentient beings, but that they are form appearing as sentient beings and arising through the power of karma. So form meaning like the elements, the 4 elements, that's form. So that due to the karma of the beings in hell, there arise these forms in the appearance of those hell guardians. And it's similar. One of the hells is called the crushing hell. And that's where there are these mountains that have the heads of animals on them. And then the mountains come together and crush the beings in between them. And I read somewhere that that's actually, that kind of experience is the result of having killed that type of animal. So if you were like a butcher who killed a lot of sheep, then you would have that experience of being in that situation, and these sheep-faced mountains would, crush you. I was thinking about our local hunters who kill deer, who kill bears. What else do they kill? Whatever. Anyway, so if you kill animals, then you can create the cause for that kind of experience. So anyway, those mountains that have the faces of animals on them, those are not sentient beings, but they are just forms arising in that shape due to the karma of the beings, the hell beings who are there. So this is what the Sutrantikas say, that the torturers are not sentient beings. And one of the commentaries mentioned the Chittamatrans, but I didn't understand quite what they said. It's just like a very short sentence. It says that the Chittamatrans assert that they are the minds of each being. Full stop. So I can only guess what that means, and my guess is knowing, this school says whatever we perceive is coming from our mind. There's no external forms out there, but it's all just imprints in our mind, causing those appearances. Although they do say that doesn't mean there's no other sentient beings besides me, that every other sentient being is just coming from my mind. They don't agree with that. They do accept that there are other sentient beings. But maybe in this case, with the hell torturers, maybe they would say that, no, those are just appearances to the minds of the beings who are in hell due to their karma. I'm just guessing, but I couldn't find any other information about that. And I didn't find anything about the Madhyamikas, what they say. I'll keep looking. And speaking of hell, I've just been reading this book. It's the Dalai Lama's very first book called My Land and My People. I read it probably 50 years ago when I first went to Dharamsala, and I just loved it. I was just so impressed by the Dalai Lama. And he wrote it shortly after escaping from Tibet because he wanted the world to know what happened in Tibet, because the Chinese were putting out all this propaganda about the peaceful liberation of Tibet and how wonderful everything was in Tibet because of their presence. So the Dalai Lama wanted to tell what was really going on. So it mainly covers the time between 1950, when the Chinese first entered, and then 1959, when he escaped. And at the end of the book, he's talking about how after escaping from Tibet, he tried to get help from the United Nations. And he also mentioned this organization called the International Commission of Jurists. So that organization he says it's an independent association of judges, lawyers, and teachers of law, supported by 30,000 lawyers from 50 countries. And it exists to foster the rule of law and to mobilize world legal opinion wherever there seems to be a systematic violation of the rule of law. So that organization investigated the situation of Tibet, and they looked into the statements that were made both on the Chinese side and the Tibetan side. They interviewed Tibetan refugees in India. And in doing that, he says, they brought to light more horrors than even I had heard of. And he says he doesn't want to go into the details, but just, he said, tens of thousands of our people have been killed, not only in military actions, but individually and deliberately. They have been killed without trial on suspicion of opposing communism or of hoarding money, or simply because of their position, or for no reason at all. But mainly and fundamentally, they have been killed because they would not renounce their religion. They have not only been shot, but beaten to death, crucified, burned alive, drowned, vivisected, starved. It's hard to read this. Anyway, horrible, horrible, horrible things. The ways that they were killed, and these killings were done in public. Their family, their friends, the neighbors, all the people in the village were forced to come and watch these killings, and they were carried out slowly, not quickly, but taking a lot of time. So, we know things like this happen. They've happened since the beginning of human beings living on this earth, probably. But yeah, reading that just made me think about it again, especially since we've just been talking about the hell realms. And thinking about, of course, the suffering of the victims is completely horrible, but just thinking about the people who ordered those killings and carried out those killings. Yeah. Human beings, we have mirror neurons. We have natural empathy. We know what other beings are feeling. So for a human being to deliberately inflict suffering, the most excruciating possible kind of suffering, on other human beings who are probably screaming, crying out for mercy, begging them to stop, and they don't stop, they continue, and they do it again and again and again. So, it's hard, impossible to imagine that state of mind, but if you can get some sense of it, what kind of karma is being created? What kind of experiences are you creating for yourself? Because I really do believe everybody knows, every human being knows that doing that kind of thing is wrong. We know we don't want to be treated that way. Nobody wants to be treated that way. So somewhere in our mind, we know that we are doing something absolutely horrible, absolutely wrong. And yet they probably bury those thoughts. They cover them up with justifications. They're following orders, or they're angry. I think many of the Chinese in Tibet didn't want to be there. It was a horrible place, far from home. So they're probably really unhappy, really angry. And anyway, various reasons to suppress that sense of wrongness, that awareness of what they're doing. But sooner or later, that awareness is going to come to the surface. And it could very well be at the time of death. Because people who have near-death experiences often describe having a full recall of everything they did in their life, in a flash. They see everything they ever did. They know the things they did that were wrong. They feel intense regret for doing those things. So somebody who created that much suffering for others deliberately with no compassion, no love, that's hell. So to me, that, these descriptions of the sufferings in hell, when you think of people like that and what kind of karma they're creating, it just kind of makes sense that they are creating the cause to have similar things happen to them that they inflicted on others. Yeah. And when we hear these stories or read these stories, we just feel completely horrified and maybe sick, and how could people be that way? But if we look at our own minds, we might notice similar kind of thoughts. I think we've all had times in our life when we've been angry at somebody. Maybe they hurt us, they did something really bad, and we were just so angry at them. And then these thoughts come up of wanting to get back at them, wanting to hurt them. Yeah? Have you ever had those thoughts? And we probably managed to avoid acting them out. Maybe sometimes we don't. We hit them or speak harshly to them. But I think it's that type of mind that wants to hurt, that feels angry, hateful, cruel, and wants to inflict suffering on another person, another being. So, I mean, it took me a long time to get up the courage to acknowledge that I had those kind of thoughts in my mind, and that in past lives I may have acted that way. This is what they say in the teachings, that we have done every single possible negative action there could be. We have killed, we have tortured, we have done awful things. So I didn't really want to accept that for a long time. What? Me? No way, I would never do those things. But watching my mind, seeing the kind of thoughts that sometimes come up in my mind, I finally had to acknowledge, yes, I think I am capable. I probably have done things like that in the past. And if I was in certain circumstances, we just never know what conditions we'll find ourselves in the future. But if we're not in such ideal circumstances that help to foster our compassion and our love, we could easily find ourselves doing those awful things again. I have no doubt about that. And so for me, of course, the sufferings of the lower realms are horrifying, and I definitely want to avoid them. But what I really want to do is work on this mind and eliminate those types of thoughts, those types of impulses, so that they never arise again. And I never even have the thought or the wish to do anything harmful, even to a little bug. So, how do we do that? That leads us to the next topic of refuge, the 3 jewels of refuge. They are the ones that can help us to avoid these unfortunate realms, but more importantly, get ourselves out of this situation where there's even the possibility that we could create the cause for those realms, and completely purify ourselves of those, and then be in a position where we can help others do the same. Okay, so thank goodness there is a solution. It's not hopeless. So in this book, the topic of refuge isn't covered very extensively, but it is, a shorter version of the Lamrim Chenmo. And I thought that maybe I don't really need to add much more to what's here, because you've just had lots of teachings on refuge from Venerable Chinyi over the last, how many months? 4 months or so of the winter retreat, and then doing a lot of meditation on refuge during the winter retreat. And then also, Venerable Children is coming back soon, and when she comes back, she's going to start teaching Volume 4, Following the Buddha's Footsteps. And the first 3 chapters of that are all about refuge in great detail, glorious detail, the different qualities of the 3 jewels and so on. So I think, if we can go through this section fairly quickly. And I did make some slides just containing the main points of the outline that can help you to keep track of where we are. Okay, so we're on page 99. And so it says, relying on the means to gain happiness in future lives. This has 2 points: training and going for refuge, the holy gateway for entering the teachings, and generating the faith of conviction in actions and their effects, or karma, the root of all well-being. So these are the 2 methods that we can rely on to make sure we have fortunate rebirths and avoid unfortunate ones in our future lives. Okay, so first, training going for refuge, the holy gateway for entering the teachings. This has 4 points. Who's doing the outline? Who's doing the slides? Anyone? It's not absolutely necessary, but it just maybe helps. Okay, there's 4 points to this topic of refuge. The causes of going for refuge. Based on those, the objects to which you go for refuge, the way in which you go for refuge, and the stages of training after having gone for refuge. So the causes of going for refuge. Although in general there are many causes, here it is the fact explained above that we do not stay in this life, but soon die, and that after death we do not have control over where the force of our karma will send us to be reborn. Regarding karma, entering the Bodhisattva way, Shantideva's text says, just as lightning on a cloudy night illuminates the darkness for a moment, likewise, through the power of the Buddhas, a rare, wholesome thought appears in the world. Therefore, virtue is perpetually weak, while evil is very strong and quite unbearable. Thinking about how you will fall into the lower rebirths because the power of wholesome karma is so weak, while that of unwholesome karma is extremely strong, will give rise to the 2 convictions: fear of the lower rebirths and faith that the 3 jewels, so rare and precious, can protect you from them. So the word for jewel here, when we talk about the 3 jewels, is kunchok, like our friend here. And that literally means rare and precious. So the 3 jewels are rare and precious ones. So those are the 2 causes of refuge. The first is fear of the lower realms. That's not so difficult to generate because just hearing about them is pretty terrifying. The second cause of refuge is faith in the 3 jewels. And that may not be as easy to generate. If you're born in a country like Tibet or another country where many people are Buddhist, your family's Buddhist, people around you are Buddhist, you're sort of brought up surrounded by people who have that kind of faith, and it may be easy for you to feel that way. Just kind of naturally, you learn it from the people around you and so on. But most of us don't have that experience. We grow up in a different environment, and we only meet Buddha's teachings later in life. And we may be very skeptical for good reason. We may have been brought up in another religion that said things that we couldn't believe, and we're not so willing to jump into another belief system, without investigating it. Going through the other topics under refuge, especially the qualities of the 3 jewels, which we'll come to soon, and learning about those and meditating on those, and I think also trying out Buddha's teachings, like trying meditation, practicing meditation, and see what effects it has, and trying out things like living ethically and see what effect that has, and learning more about what the Buddha taught and contemplating that. I think gradually that's how faith will grow in our minds. But yeah, for many of us, that's something that may take time. Okay, then, consequently, If these two remain but words, going for refuge will be similar. Though we don't want refuge to just be words in our mouth, but really needs to be from our heart. But if they are strong and firm, your going for refuge will come to tame your mind. Therefore, put in effort into generating those two causes. Okay, so that's the first point, the causes of going refuge. The second point is the objects to which we go for refuge. And this has 2 points: identifying the objects of refuge and the reasons why they are worthy to be a refuge. Identifying the objects of refuge, there's a quote from a text, Praise in 150 verses. It seems the author of that is Ashvaghosha. The one in whom all faults are perpetually, completely absent, the one in whom in every way all excellent qualities abide. If you have good sense, you will go to such a one for refuge. It is right to praise and honor him and to abide in what he teaches. Thus, if someone has the intelligence to differentiate between a refuge and what is not a refuge, it is appropriate for him or her to go for refuge to the undeceiving protector, the blessed Buddha. This also characterizes the Dharma jewel and the Sangha jewel. 70 verses on going for refuge, that seems to be a text from Chandrakirti, says, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are the refuge of those who want liberation. So I think for many of us, it's difficult to accept that a Buddha, that there is such a thing as a Buddha, an enlightened being, who's completely free of all faults and fully developed in all positive qualities. And if you grew up hearing about that and seeing people around you believing that and showing great devotion to that, then it might be easier. But we don't grow up with that. And we're trained to be skeptical. We're trained to question, to investigate. So I think it's natural to wonder, well, how do we know? How can we possibly know that the Buddha really is free of all faults and has developed all good qualities? So in fact, we can't. We can't know for sure. Not possible to be 100% certain of that. But I remember when I was studying the master's program, and in the Ornament for Clear Realization, there's the topic of refuge and the three jewels is one of the topics there. And I seem to recall, I'd have to check exactly how it went, but our teachers said that, I can't remember, I remember how it is. It said that there's two kinds of followers of that text, two kinds of people who study and practice and follow the text, Ornament for Clear Realization. One type of person is called a follower of faith, and a follower of faith is someone who kind of immediately believes things, okay? So you say to that person, Buddha is perfect, Buddha has no faults, it's only good qualities, and if you follow the Buddha, practice the Dharma, you'll get all those qualities too. So somebody hears that and they think, yes, I believe it, I want to do it. They don't have doubt. And they jump in and start practicing. And the other kind of person is called a follower of reasoning. And this is somebody who is skeptical. They hear a statement like that and they think, how do I know for sure? How do I know that's true? And they investigate. So they go into a process of investigation. And in the course of their investigation, they realize emptiness. They get a realization of emptiness. And it doesn't have to be a direct one, but just an initial realization of emptiness. And with that realization of emptiness, they are able to understand, infer that if they continue meditating on emptiness, continue familiarizing their minds with emptiness, they will be able to free their mind from all the faults, all the afflictions, all the obscurations, and develop, all positive qualities. So they have it's like they get a taste for themselves of how it is possible to do that, how it is possible to totally transform your mind. And then they have faith in the Buddha, because they know, oh, it is possible through their own experience. They can see it is possible to do that. And our teacher said sometimes people don't take refuge until after they've realized emptiness. I was like, whoa. But that, that means that refuge is really strong, really genuine. They really know who they're taking refuge in, what they're taking refuge in. And it's really, coming from faith of conviction rather than, like blind faith. Not to say it's wrong, to have initial faith in the Buddha, even if we haven't yet realized emptiness. It's still a good thing, but it's much stronger. So they say of those two types of people, follower of faith and follower of reasoning. Follower of reasoning is actually, this is a better approach if you follow that way. And I was quite relieved when I heard this, because I've always had trouble believing things, and always lots of doubts and questions. So to find out that was okay was a relief. So anyway, if you're someone who has doubt, who's skeptical about these kind of claims, like Buddha's completely free of all faults, it's okay. Yeah, but don't just turn away from that, but investigate. That's the key. And just check to see if it's true or not. And you will be able to get to a point where you can experience for yourself the truth of that it is possible for someone to do that, for you to do that. Okay, then next point, the reasons why they are worthy to be a refuge. One who is worthy to be a refuge is free of all fear, skilled in the means of liberating others from fear, steeped in great compassion toward everyone without closeness or distance, and works for the welfare of all beings, whether they help him or not. So these are 4 qualities that the Buddha has, and because he has them, that's why he's worthy to be an object of refuge for us. So for a long time, when it talks about Buddha being free of all fear, I thought that means Buddha doesn't have any fear, which is true, I'm sure. Buddha has no fear of anything. But it seems like the term fear here isn't referring so much to the feeling of fear, the experience of fear, but rather things to be afraid of, dangers, as in, those 8 fears that Tara protects from, things like lions and fires and elephants and so on. So those are called fears, but they're actually more like objects of fear, things that could harm us, things, maybe peril is a good term, 8 perils, scary things. So I think maybe this is the meaning here, that the word fear actually refers to things that could harm, that could cause problems. So Buddha is beyond that. There's nothing that can harm Buddha, nothing that the Buddha needs to be worried about or afraid of. But he's also free of all fear as well. People often ask about fear because it's not mentioned in the list of mental factors, right? We have all these 51 mental factors, and fear isn't there. But fear is such a big, it's a big deal. We all experience it sometimes. So I don't know why. I never got an answer why it's not on the list of mental factors. But it's definitely something we experience. And it's not necessarily negative. Yeah. Because there's healthy fear and unhealthy fear. So healthy fear is being aware that there are things that could harm us, knowing about those things and taking precautions against them, like lower realms. Okay, it's good to be fearful of the lower realms to make sure we avoid them. We don't create the cause to go there. Yeah, so anyway, but for Buddha, there's nothing to fear. Buddha is completely free of all negative karma, which is the cause for bad things happening. So nothing bad could ever happen to the Buddha, so nothing to be afraid of. Okay, so that's the first quality, being free of all fears. Then, second is skilled in the means of liberating others from fear. So not only is Buddha himself free of all fear, but Buddha knows how to help others reach that state as well, get beyond all fear. And then third is he's steeped in great compassion towards everyone without closeness or distance. So if the Buddha was free of all fear, and he knew how to help others be free of all fear, but if he didn't have compassion, he wouldn't help others. Or he might help some, but not everybody. He would help the people he likes, but not others. That's not the case. Buddha has equanimity towards all beings and compassion, totally dedicated to helping all living beings. And so we're very fortunate that he wants to help us. And then the fourth quality is he works for the welfare of all beings, whether they help him or not. So they say, if you have somebody on one side of the Buddha who's making offerings, very respectful, very, appreciative, devoted to the Buddha, and you have somebody else on the other side who's angry and hateful and criticizing and trying to harm, the Buddha's attitude towards both types of people are exactly the same. That would be hard to do. But yeah, it isn't the case that Buddha only helps those who like him, listen to him, believe in him, do what he says, obey his advice, and those who are opposite, who don't like him, who don't listen to him, who don't do what he says, who do opposite to what he says. The Buddha says, oh, forget them. I'm not going to help them. So the Buddha isn't like that. I remember once when I was in Singapore and I was giving a talk about Refuge, and I explained this, and one lady came up afterwards. She was quite upset. She was not happy at all that the Buddha didn't have preferences. It's like, I didn't quite understand where she was coming from, but she thought that seemed unfair, that if we love the Buddha, we worship the Buddha, we make offerings to the Buddha, that he should like us more than those other people. Anyway, different people have different ideas about things. I mean, for me, the fact that Buddha has compassion, even for those who are just totally do opposite to what he says, that is an excellent quality. I really admire that. But she couldn't see that as a good quality. Okay. And then he says, as only the Buddha has those qualifications, while Ishvara and the like do not, he is a refuge. So I guess one reason I did appreciate this was, being brought up as a Catholic and being told that, we have to obey God, otherwise we get sent to hell. Those who don't obey God, don't do what he says, he sends them to hell. And I always thought, that's not fair. It's horrible. I wouldn't do that. So it was quite a relief to find out that Buddha isn't like that. For that reason, the Dharma taught by him, okay, so Buddha has these excellent qualities, and therefore the Dharma, his teachings, as well as the Sangha of his disciples. So the main Sangha are the Aryas, those who have gained the direct realization of emptiness. But as we know, there's looser meanings of Sangha, monastic Sangha, and even people who come together in a Buddhist center and practice together, spiritual friends. So the Sangha are also worthy objects of refuge. But yeah, when you're talking about an object of refuge, the Sangha as an object of refuge, it really should be someone who's seriously practicing the Buddhist teachings. Because I've heard that term used for people who aren't even Buddhist. Just in Israel, they have this, a group of people come together and meditate, and they call it a Sangha. And they may not even be Buddhist. They may not even be doing Buddhist meditation. But it's, nice to think of a community. This is my community, my fellow meditators. But to use the word Sangha for that is, kind of distorts the meaning of Sangha. So ideally, the Sangha are those who are on the same path and, on the same page, having the same worldview, going in the same direction, and so they can give us help and support in our practice. Okay, that being so, once you have derived certainty with regard to these objects of refuge set forth in the compendium, I guess he means probably a Sangha's text, compendium of Abhidharma. When you are able to rely on them with a single pointed mind, it is impossible for you not to be protected. Therefore, you should generate certainty from the depths of your heart. Of the two causes for being protected, there is no incompleteness in the external one, our teacher having established it. However, since the internal cause, taking hold of that refuge trustingly, has not come about, we suffer. So the two causes of refuge, the one about Buddha being, the three jewels being able to give us protection, that's there. That's, definite. But whether we have the cause of, being afraid of suffering and relying on the three jewels to protect us from suffering, that is something we need to work on. And, until we really develop that and use that and follow that, then we will continue to suffer. So then the third point, the way in which you go for refuge. This has 4 points. So the next slide goes into the details of this one. Going for refuge by way of understanding their excellent qualities, by way of understanding their distinctions, by way of commitment, and by way of not advocating other ones, other objects of refuge. Okay, going for refuge by way of understanding their excellent qualities. Since this requires recollecting the excellent qualities of the objects of refuge, this has 3 points: the excellent qualities of the Buddha, the excellent qualities of the Dharma, and the excellent qualities of the Sangha. And the excellent qualities of the Buddha has 4 points: the excellent qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, mind, and exalted activities. Okay, so the first one, the excellent qualities of the Buddha's body, there's a long quotation from a text called Praise in Analogies. I don't know who's the author of that. It says it's a chapter within the praise of the one worthy of praise. And the author of that is Arya Sura. Okay. So this is recollecting the signs and marks of a Buddha. So it said that a Buddha has 32 major signs and 100, what is it, 32 major, 180, 108 or 180? 80 and 32. Okay, sorry. And those are all listed in Ornament for Clear Realization, along with the causes, like what the Buddha did, the practices he did to be able to have each of those marks. Your body is adorned with a sign so beautiful, nectar for the eyes, like a cloudless sky in autumn, ornamented with clusters of stars. O sage, endowed with a color of gold, so beautiful, dressed in monastic robes, like a golden mountain top, wrapped in clouds at dusk or dawn. Protector, the sphere of your face's splendor, although unadorned by jewelry, is beyond that of the full moon in a vast and cloudless sky. If the lotus of your mouth and a lotus in bloom in the sun are beheld by a bee, the bee will have its doubts about the lotus. Your face, endowed with a color of gold, is beautified further with your pure white teeth, like immaculate autumn moonbeams filtering between golden mountains. Venerable One, your right hand, embellished with the mark of the wheel, gives breath to the people terrified by the cycle of samsaric existence. O sage, as you walk, your feet leave designs on the earth like resplendent lotuses. Could Padmini be lovelier? You should recollect them in accordance with these verses. Yeah, so each of these 32 and 80 marks of a Buddha has its own causes. And the only one I remember, I think it's the Ushnisha, the crown protrusion. The cause for that is seeing off and receiving your teachers. So whenever your teacher is leaving, you're there to say goodbye to them. When your teacher returns, you're there to greet them respectfully. So doing that again and again and again with your teachers for eons. The Buddha created the cause to have this crown protrusion. And so, yeah, when you learn about all the causes of these signs, then it's very inspiring. And the excellent qualities of the Buddha's speech. Contemplate the marvelous way in which, when many people ask different questions at the same time, the Buddha apprehends them in a single moment of intelligent awareness and answers them all with one utterance, which they understand in their respective languages. The Satyaka chapter says, thus, if all beings simultaneously ask many questions in their specific languages, his mind comprehends them in a single moment and answers them all with one melodious statement. In this way, he who guides the world knowingly teaches with his melodious voice, he completely turns the wheel of Dharma that puts an end to the suffering of gods and men. Reflect along the lines of these verses. So we don't have a chance to hear the Buddha's voice directly and experience what's described here, but fortunately the Buddha's teachings, his words, have been preserved. For a long time they were just preserved orally, passed from teacher to disciple, memorizing them and teaching them, then later written down. So we're fortunate that they're still existing in the world, and we have the opportunity to read them, and now more and more of them are being translated into English so that we can, it's really, I find it wonderful to be able to read the actual sutras of the Buddha. Pali Canon, I don't know if the whole of the Pali Canon has been translated into English, but a lot of it has, those big thick books like this. And then Mahayana Sutras, and now this wonderful organization, 84,000, is translating. I mean, it's just amazing. They're totally dedicated to translating all the words of the Buddha, and then eventually commentaries as well, the Indian commentaries. So we're very fortunate. Okay, then, the excellent qualities of the Buddha's mind. Only one sentence here. This has 2 points. The excellent qualities, I see, yeah, then there's more detail. The excellent qualities of his excellent knowing and the excellent qualities of his loving kindness. So it said that all the excellent qualities of the Buddha can be comprised in those two, his knowing or wisdom and his loving kindness, his compassion, care, concern for all living beings. Okay, first, the excellent qualities of exalted knowing. Since all objects of knowledge, ultimate and conventional, are engaged by the sage's unobstructed exalted knowing, like a myrobalan fruit placed in the palm of his hand, the sage's excellent knowing covers all objects of knowledge. I've seen a few times Jeffrey's translated that as an olive. Maybe because it looks like an olive, like a small green fruit. But in the notes here it says it's actually transparent. It's a transparent fruit, so you can kind of see through it and all the things inside. I think it might be a medicinal fruit used in Ayurvedic medicine. However, others' limited knowing cannot cover the vast extent of objects to be known. Regarding this, praise of the one worthy of praise says, "Only your wisdom encompasses all objects of knowledge. For everyone else apart from you, some objects are yet to be known." So this is one of the main qualities of the Buddha. Buddha is also known as the omniscient one, because his mind sees all things that exist, whatever exists, all conventional phenomena and all conventional truths and all ultimate truths, and he's able to see all of these things simultaneously. Like, wow, that's like mind-boggling. So with each moment of the Buddha's mind, all phenomena, whatever exists in the universe, and also whatever existed in the past, whatever will exist in the future, all existing things are seen clearly, just like if you had a little fruit in your hand. So nobody else is able to do that. And, Blessed One, all phenomena throughout time, in every aspect and place of origin, are objects of experience of your mind, like a myrobalan fruit in the palm of your hand. As regards phenomena, static or mobile, I guess that means permanent and impermanent, single or various, each distinct individual. Your mind is obstructed from none of them, like the wind moving across the sky. Reflect in accordance with these words. So again, it's not really possible for us to know this for sure until, we ourselves develop our minds and clear away obstructions in our mind and develop the potential of our mind. And the more that our own mind gets cleared up, purified, and developed, then the more we'll be able to understand and accept that it's possible to do this. And the Buddha has done this. And there's many Buddhas, many beings who have reached awakening and have achieved that state. So until we know for sure, we just accept on faith. Okay, then excellent qualities of his loving kindness. Sentient beings are bound by the afflictions without any control. Likewise, the Buddha is bound by great compassion without control. He can't control his compassion. Sounds kind of funny. Because great compassion continuously arises in him when he perceives suffering sentient beings. So, I don't think it means he's without control, but, as Dharmakirti talks about in Pramadavartika, the Buddha has spent such a long time, so many lifetimes, so many eons cultivating compassion, great compassion. And so it really does get to the point where it's just spontaneous. It's just naturally rising, spontaneous, without having to make any effort. We have to make effort usually to feel compassion, but for a Buddha, it just arises naturally and effortlessly. And there's so many sentient beings in the universe, and there's so much suffering. And the Buddha sees them all. Yeah, he sees all of us. He sees every thought in our mind, every feeling that we have, he sees us better than we see ourselves. He can see, our suffering, our causes of suffering, and so on. So just awareness of all that suffering, naturally. There's compassion continuously, but no despair. Okay, so it's totally, courageous compassion without any sense of despair or hopelessness. Because he knows it is possible. Every single sentient being can be free of suffering and its causes, and he's totally dedicated, involved in helping us achieve that. So just full on taking care of sentient beings. Okay, praise in 150 verses says, every one of these sentient beings is equally bound by the afflictions. You have long been bound by compassion. To release them from their afflictions, should I first prostrate to you or to that which causes you to stay in samsara so long, aware of its faults, to great compassion? So as we know, Chandrakirti decided to pay homage to great compassion at the beginning of his text, Madhyamakavatara, because it's compassion from which arises the Buddha, all the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas, all the hearers and solitary realizers. They all come from compassion. The Satyaka chapter also says, when he observes all beings with minds constantly obscured by the darkness of ignorance, locked up in the prison of cyclic existence, great compassion is born in the holy sage. Recollect his loving kindness in accordance with these statements. Okay, then the excellent qualities of the Buddha's exalted activities. He benefits all sentient beings through both the spontaneous and the uninterrupted exalted activities of his body, speech, and mind. Insofar as a disciple is fit for guidance, it is impossible for the sage not to give that trainee what is excellent and pull him or her out of trouble. Thus, it is stated that through his actions, he definitely does everything that is necessary. Potoa said this: if you reflect on the Buddha's qualities again and again, your conviction strengthens and your mind stream becomes pure, which gives rise to more blessings. When you have gained certain knowledge about this, you will go for refuge from the depths of your heart. Then, if you merely train in the precepts, whatever you do will become a practice of the Buddha Dharma. We do not value the Buddha's exalted knowing even as much as we value an accurate fortune teller. If an accurate fortune teller tells you, "I know there will be no bad luck for you this year," you walk away happy and comfortable. If she says, "This year there will be great misfortune, do this, don't do that," you will try hard to accomplish it. And if you do not accomplish it, you will think, "I did not accomplish what she told me to do," and your mind will be anxious. If the Buddha says, "Do this and do that, accomplish this and that," do you take it on? If you do not accomplish it, does your mind become anxious? To claim, the teachings say that, but owing to present circumstances, I cannot do it right now, so I must do this instead, is to ignore the Buddha's advice and proceed on the basis of your own discernment. I don't know how many of us have ever consulted fortune tellers, but in some places, some parts of the world, you have. Astrologers, palm readers, people, what is it? They look at your eyeballs or something. Yeah, I guess there's interest in that kind of thing. But yeah, I guess he's making the point that people don't really pay attention to what the Buddha says, but they pay a lot of attention to fortune tellers, astrologers, and so on, and it's not quite right. Just as Potoa says here, if we turn our mind inward and examine carefully, we will recognize that it is so true that our normal attitude, one of trusting others' mere words and being content without discernment, is nothing but delusion. Therefore, think about the Buddha's excellent qualities again and again, and try to gain as much certainty as possible. Once that develops, you will have arrived at the main point of going for refuge. For a similar certainty will arise concerning the Dharma received from him and from the Sangha of those accomplishing that Dharma. There is no way that going for refuge or taming the mind, let alone other paths, will not occur without it. Sorry? Will occur. Okay, I think it's probably time to stop. Getting tired. Okay, so there's no way that going for refuge or taming the mind, let alone other paths, will occur without it. Okay, so we need to develop certainty with regard to the Buddha's qualities and ability to serve as a reliable object of refuge for us. And then on the basis of that, we'll be able to have certainty about his teachings, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the followers. Okay, so I'll stop there. We have a few minutes left if anyone has a question. Junie.
A question about the text in general, because these little stories and quotes are the exact same ones he uses in the Lamrim Chenmo. So is this middle length more like an edited version of that, or is that's just generally the idea?
Well, I haven't compared this section with that, but some parts of this text are much shorter than the Lamrim Chenmo. He has a lot more information there and a lot more quotations. But yeah, in general, this text is a kind of condensed version of that. But later on, especially the insight section, and I think also maybe the calm abiding section, there are some differences. And I think there's also a section on the two truths at the end, which isn't in the Lamrim Chenmo. So the earlier part of the text is very similar, but later it gets different. I guess there's differences as well. I haven't really gone into depth, but the way he explains emptiness in the insight section, because this was written, I don't know how many years later after the Lamrim Chenmo, so his wisdom was growing. Yeah, but that's what I've heard, that this represents his final views on emptiness. Anyone else?
We often hear that the distinction between Dharma and non-Dharma is whether your motivation goes beyond this life. And in Podawa's quote, it says, when you have gained certain knowledge about this, you will go for refuge from the depth of your heart. Then if you merely train in the precepts, whatever you do will become a practice of the Buddha Dharma. Does that mean that if you have refuge, but not necessarily a motivation beyond this life, that also becomes a practice of pure Dharma?
But why would you go for refuge if you were only thinking of this life? If you thought this is the only life there is, and I'm not going to have another life after this one, there's no danger of being born in the lower realms, why would you go to refuge? Because, the first of the causes of refuge is fear of the lower realms. So, yeah, that's kind of the what's the word? The starting point, yeah.
So you would have to have that motivation beyond this life to really genuinely take refuge.
I would think so. I would think so. Otherwise, yeah, what would be another motivation? If you only believed in this lifetime and when I die, everything will come to an end. There won't be any continuation, no danger of any bad things happening. Why would you go for refuge? What would be your reason, your motivation for going refuge? Well, I really like the Buddha, his teachings. I want to be like him. I mean, it could be positive thoughts, but that's not real refuge. I think real refuge, ideally, is based on understanding the full picture. The Buddhist worldview goes beyond this life. That's what I think, yeah. Someone else? No? Okay, so let's stop there and dedicate.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losung's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzing Gyatso Chenrezig, may you stay until samsara ends. May the deeds of explaining and practicing the Dharma done by groups supporting the teachings and their upholders, who spread the view of dependent arising and non-violent actions in the 10 directions, and especially at Sravasti Abbey in the west. Flourish.
We're going to do this prayer.